What are the barriers to transformation in your team? And the typical answers that come are things like this. Right? Maybe if you had thought about it for a minute, you might have come up with similar barriers. In most sessions, this is what comes. Now, I ask my own question as to why didn't I come up with Uber? Now, every time an innovation comes up, like an iPhone, iPod, I used to ask this question of myself as someone studying innovations for more than 20 years. Previously, when I got this question, it usually comes up with I don't have the resources or the R&D budgets and so on. But this time, I was the global CIO of Cognizant. I had several thousand people in the IT department. And we used to transport 25,000 people a day, every day, to SLA driven functions. So, had I come up with the idea, I could have built the first version of it. Now, in my opinion, this is an anomaly because Uber repackaged pre existing technologies Google Maps, GPS based navigation, payment gateways, app stores, social media, all of which was pre existing. No new technology was invented. So, this particular question became a lightning rod for me. As I investigated further, I went to cognitive psychology and my favorite thought experiment. Imagine tomorrow morning you open the door to your house and you see a newborn baby like that screaming its guts out. What is the first thing you will do? And most people in the sessions I do answer correctly that they would pick up the baby and try to comfort it. That brings us to a very interesting finding from cognitive psychology, which we call fault mode versus responsibility mode mindset. It's not my fault that the baby showed up at the doorstep, but I still take responsibility for it. I comfort it and then figure out whose baby is it, should I call the police, and so on. But unfortunately for us human beings, our default setting is fault mode. Now, if you look back at the barriers to transformation, you would agree that those were a product of a fault mode mindset. Let's take a simple day to day example. Somebody comes late to an in person meeting and you ask them why they are late, they are likely to say traffic. These days, in the COVID induced Zoom scenarios, people complain about network delays. So, those are clearly fault mode responses. A responsibility mode person would have planned for it, right? The fact that traffic and network delays happen is a well known fact. So, the why I didn't come up with Uber is because I didn't take responsibility for the taxi cab industry's experience. So, the first thing to do would be to shift yourself into a responsibility mindset and take responsibility for your customer experience, be they internal or external. Now, where do you start the transformation program? Again, the question when I ask, most people correctly say it's a big problem. Big ideas are a bad starting point. Now, when it comes to big problems, one of the typical things that happens to us is we go after the stated problem straight away, which results in tip of the iceberg ideas. So when I became the global CIO, my boss, Gordon Coburn, who was the CFO, as well as the CEO and all the CXOs in the company, mentioned that we should go after associate delight. So in my infinite wisdom, I got hold of internal and external consultants, prepared a proposal, and went to my boss and told him I need $25 million in 2 years. Gordon, one of the most prodigious people that I've ever worked for, sat me down and explained to me why that can't be done and the fact that we had already spent hundreds of millions of dollars on IT. So he told me to do the transformation with no new budget dollars and try and get something done in 6 months. That was his mandate. And because he challenged us, we created an innovative approach and a transformation program which we called One Cognizant, which later resulted in a $1 billion impact on Cognizant. So the key takeaway is to never ideate directly from the stated problem because you get mediocre ideas like my 2 years and $25 million. So I start digging deeper and I landed on an interesting problem. I spoke to a lot of people and we found it difficult to define the word problem because we use it so often on an everyday basis. There is not an accepted definition of it. People will say pain, frustration, or hem and haw and various things. Finally, after talking to many people and my own research, I came up with this simple definition. A problem is an unmet expectation. When a software or a system or a process or a person or anything does not meet the expectations, there is a problem. Now, why I didn't come up with Uber is because I did not have the expectation that Travis Kalanick and Garrett Camp set out to do. That is, I want the car where I am standing when I am standing right now. Since I didn't expect that, there was no problem. And hence, I couldn't come up with the solution also. So is the case with all of you that didn't come up with the Uber idea. Now, that led us to coin a new phrase called performance under supply. Because it's not a problem, so what is it? So it's best thought to be a deficiency in comparison to an extreme objective, which in Uber's case is I want the car where I am standing when I am standing right now, which led them to the GPS based triangulation, and the rest is history. You can also think of this in plain English as unperceived problems. So in one cognizant, we had a 500% productivity gain. So when we tested app designs against that, we were able to generate much better ideas than typical IT projects would do. So the idea is to, using performance under supply, you can solve problems in an unexpected, delightful way. And this will create the transformation. If you went after a stated problem, as best you could get is an excellent or a good job. You are not likely to get delighted, which is why you need to go after performance under supply. So let's take an example. We have all had this problem in the furniture space, right? We want to try out this big sofa at our home. We are not sure whether it will fit into the rest of the decor. And there was not an easy way to do this besides bringing it home or taking pictures or whatever. So IKEA, they set out to figure out the furniture fitment without visiting the store. And they connected the dot to augmented reality, and they created this brilliant app, an AR app, which is there on the App Store. I played around with it. It's you can fit the furniture into your home and see how it looks with the rest of the furniture without having to actually go to the store at all. So this is from the specialty retailing industry. Now, this pattern of the performance under supply holds across 1,000+ disruptive innovations and inventions that I have studied. So definitely there is something here. Let's look at a few more examples. The ATM. James Shepard Barron in the year 1967 decided to ask the question, why can't I get my own money on a Sunday because the bank is closed? That led him to invent the ATM, modern ATM, and the rest is history. Contact lenses. If you had spoken to contact lens users, they would have at best said, I have this problem in the night of keeping the thing back and it falls down, and I don't, keeping the thing clean is hard. But there was no expectation of a disposable contact, right? That was the extreme objective that J&J and Vistacom fulfilled. And now it's an industry standard. Yahoo and Hotmail, we had this mailbox full condition. Again, we did not have the expectation of a 1 GB mailbox that Google delivered on April 1st, 2004, which we all thought was a prank that they are famous for. We know about the smartphone with no button. Again, the expectation we didn't have. In retailing, Sylvan Goldman observed that people found it hard to carry stuff, so they would only buy a small amount of stuff. So he came up with the extreme objective of buying a lot of stuff, but without having to carry it, which led him to the iconic shopping cart that we still use. In healthcare, you can't see your doctor without waiting. I believe this is an unsolved problem. If I can meet my doctor without waiting, that would be a $1 billion or a multi-billion-dollar innovation. So like this, Amazon's book example, shoes from Zappos, Alexa, Tesla, Uber Eats, and Kevin Ashton, the father of IoT, how he came up with the idea of IoT. And he was just trying to find the stock of a particular lipstick that Procter and Gamble was selling at that time. So there are just lots of inventions that fit this pattern. So I will take a bet with you that in your team there is an opportunity, and I'm 100% sure about it. And why is that the case? Performance under supply is 100% given because they are a result of design flaws in a process, system, or function. And similar to how we cannot create 100% defect-free software, we cannot create 100% design flaw-free anything, which is why performance under supply is a given. And why we can't do that is because humans are fallible beings. So if you want to take me up on my wager, I'm happy to talk to you and your team if you believe in your team there is no opportunity. With that, I thank you all for listening.